Welcome to the Reawaken You podcast, the podcast for women who are done dimming their light. I'm your host, Kate Parker, empowerment coach and founder of Reawaken Coaching. Together, we'll dive into authenticity, sovereignty, and the art of self-leadership, everything it takes to embody your own queen energy and create a legacy that's unapologetically yours. Let's begin. You may have been wondering where I am. Well, I'm still right here. I'm just moving through a strange and tender kind of season. On the one hand, I'm planning for 2026 and where I want to take my work and what direction feels aligned and how I want to grow. And on the other hand, I've been saying goodbye. My father-in-law passed away last weekend, and yesterday we held his memorial. And it was one of those perfectly gentle spring days, blue sky, sunlight on the grass, everybody sharing stories and laughter. It was the kind of day that just reminds you that life does go on, even when your heart feels, slightly fractured. And I was thankful, deeply thankful. And at the same time, I was also feeling a bit undone. Grief has this strange way of scrambling the brain. One part of you wants to move forward and be productive, and the other can barely remember what day it is. So in the weeks leading up to his passing, I found myself in a holding pattern. I wanted to write and I wanted to record and plan and create and do all the things that make me feel alive, but my mind was fogged over with concern for him and my family and my mother-in-law and most of all my daughter. So instead of doing the things I would normally do, I did small things. I did spring cleaning in my house. I water blasted the back deck. I weeded the garden and fixed some little jobs that had been waiting for months. And it wasn't about keeping busy for the sake of it. It was about giving my hands something to do while my heart caught up. Grief makes you pay attention to the simplest things, the smell of the rain on the wood, the sound of the wind, the sudden burst of sunlight after a storm. And maybe that's why I've noticed the weather so much lately and the extremes of it. One day the wind would howl and the next it would pour. And then we would have a calm golden morning that felt like, a balm on the soul. It has been 4 seasons in a week, sometimes 4 seasons in a day. And somehow that's exactly how my emotions have been too. Death has a way of pulling everything into focus. It makes you remember. And as I pottered around the house, memories of my father-in-law really started surfacing. Not just moments, but whole sensory experiences. The smell of the tools, the metal tools from his workshop in the garage, the sound of laughter over dinner, or the way that he'd just wander off mid-conversation to look something up because he just had to know the answer. He was endlessly curious. Sometimes it was maddening. But in 20 plus years, we built up a whole library of shared moments, the kind that matters more as the years go by. He wasn't just a father-in-law. He was an adventurer, a fixer, a builder of things and memories. He took my daughter under his wing when she was little, teaching her how to use tools and fly kites and build tree houses. He even tried to teach her how to drive, starting at 3. Yeah, I didn't appreciate that one. But, he taught her with such patience and delight that I just couldn't help but love the bond that they shared. A few weeks before he passed, he also helped her edit a speech for school, giving her tips from his old journalism days. And that's what really started off this train of thought. How we make memories, how they are stored, and why some stay vivid forever while others fade. When I look back on these weeks, what I remember most vividly isn't the pain, though that is there too, but it is the texture of it all, The smell of the flowers in my mother-in-law's garden, the hum of conversation, the weight of a hand on my shoulder. These tiny sensory details are like bookmarks in the story of our lives. and they matter more than we think. Neuroscience tells us that memory is not a filing cabinet. It's not a fixed archive that we can just open whenever we want. It's more like a living, breathing ecosystem. Our brains store fragments, sights, sounds, smells, emotions. And when we recall something, we actually reconstruct it. The hippocampus, the brain's internal librarian, it pulls these fragments from across the brain and weaves them together again. That's why memories aren't static and they shift slightly each time we revisit them. And here's another key player, the amygdala. That's the emotional gatekeeper. Whenever something carries strong emotion, love, fear, joy, awe, the amygdala tags it as important and it signals to the hippocampus, let's keep this one. And that's why the moments that move us, and the laughter around the table, and the grief at the graveside, and the first time that we see a breathtaking view, they're all etched so much deeper than hundreds of ordinary days we barely notice. Our brains are constantly filtering experience, and emotion is the glue that makes memory stick. The stronger the feeling, the stronger the encoding, and that's why we remember where we were when major life events happened, or why certain smells can take us straight back to childhood. It's a sensory emotional link, and that's one of the most powerful features of our biology. The olfactory bulb, the part that processes smells, I can never say that word, olfactory, but for some reason today I can. It has the direct line to the amygdala and to the hippocampus. So scent in particular anchors memory with incredible precision. And I think that that's why I've always loved wandering through gardens. Every plant, every texture, every scent has a story. And, I'm not a gardener. I'm not into pruning and planting, but I do adore being in wild and slightly untamed gardens. I love walking around and touching the leaves and smelling the herbs and talking to the bees and smelling flowers, and I just want to feel the place. My brain, without even trying, starts cataloguing sensory data. The way that sunlight lands on the leaves and the smell of wet soil and the sounds of the birds. Neuroscience, it calls this multi-sensory encoding. The more senses involved in the experience, the more pathways the brain creates to store it. And that's why when we recall a truly immersive experience, it feels so vivid. It feels almost alive. One of my favorite recent memories with my daughter is from a day that we went waterfall hunting. The road to the track had been closed after a landslide, but we decided to walk it anyway. We spent the day exploring, crossing streams, collecting stones, getting muddy, playing with the dog, finding small waterfalls that were more cascades. But they felt like discoveries anyway. And the day really wasn't about reaching a goal. It was about the feeling of a new adventure, that novelty of doing something new together. And novelty is another key piece in the neuroscience of memory. When we experience something for the first time, our brains, they release dopamine. It's not just the pleasure chemical people talk about, but it is a messenger that signals, pay attention, this matters. It's why time feels slower on a new adventure and why childhood summers seem to stretch on forever, because everything was new then. And as adults, our days often blur together because we live on autopilot. Novelty wakes the brain up again and it helps to encode the experience more deeply. So that's one way that we can live a rich life with memory. Keep creating first, not big, expensive bucket list things, but little moments of discovery, a new recipe or a walk somewhere that you've never been, or conversations you've never had. Every time you step into something unfamiliar, your brain will start to take notice and it begins to map and store, connect. And those become anchor points that help you remember your life as meaningful. And I've been thinking about this a lot, how easily we slip into routines. How much life we just scroll past without really seeing. We take photos of meals we can't even remember eating, and we post highlights of days that we weren't fully present for. But the most meaningful moments, the ones that truly shape us, often never even make it to social media. They're too sacred, too raw, too absorbing. The reason we don't photograph them is because we are in them. And presence, it turns out, is another secret ingredient of lasting memory. Neuroscience calls this attentional encoding. When we are distracted or multitasking or checking our phones or thinking about what's next, our brains only give partial energy to what's happening. But when we are fully present, our prefrontal cortex signals to the hippocampus, this matters. The more attention something gets, the more durable the memory becomes. And that's why mindfulness isn't just a wellness trend, it's a way of deepening the texture of your life. I'll be back in a minute. My lawnmower man has just arrived and he's going to mow my lawn, so I will be back when he's finished. One moment, please. Right, okay, I'm back. And the lawnmower man has now gone, which is great. So you don't have to listen to a lawnmower in the background. Anyway, okay, so presence also helps us to regulate emotions, which in turn shapes memory. When we are overwhelmed, the stress hormone cortisol floods the brain and can actually disrupt encoding. And that's why trauma memories can feel really fragmented or foggy, because the amygdala, it overfires while the hippocampus, it just shuts down. So when we're calm and we're attuned, our brains record the moment more clearly because it's balancing emotion and attention. And I find it absolutely fascinating how our biology reflects what wisdom has always taught, and that is to be here now. So to feel it fully and just let it matter. Another piece of memory that I love, and I think that my father-in-law really embodied this, is curiosity. He had this relentless drive to learn, to understand. He just went down those rabbit holes, and while it sometimes drove me absolutely mad, it also created countless shared experiences. And every time we tried to fix something or we were exploring something new, our brains were literally wiring new connections. Learning, especially when it's relational and emotionally charged, it strengthens what's called synaptic plasticity. And that's the process that allows neurons to fire together more easily next time, solidifying the memory. In simple terms, neurons that fire together wire together. And maybe that's why part of sharing and learning, like building something with someone or cooking together or traveling, it feels so bonding because we're co-creating new neural pathways, literally wiring our connection into the brain. That's why relationships built on shared experiences, not just talk, feel stronger. The memories that you create together become the architecture of intimacy. At the memorial yesterday, my brother-in-law shared the story of how my father-in-law once climbed one of New Zealand's most picturesque mountains, Mount Taranaki. If you haven't seen Mount Taranaki, you should look it up because it is just beautiful. But anyway, he climbed it without sunscreen. Now, for those of you who are not in New Zealand, one of the things we always have on us here is sunscreen. It burns us so easily here due to the thinning of the ozone layer. Anyway, back to the story. He was so focused on the goal of reaching this incredible summit that he didn't even notice the burn until he was glowing red. And when he got back to the bottom of the mountain, he checked himself into hospital. And that story made everyone laugh because it captured his essence just so perfectly. Determined, curious, reckless. But what struck me later was how stories like this keep people alive. Telling stories is one of the brain's most powerful tools for memory consolidation. Every time we recall and share an event, we are strengthening the neural network that holds it. It's like rehearsing a song. The more you play it, the more natural it becomes. Storytelling also activates empathy circuits in the listener's brain. So when you tell a story, you're literally syncing brain patterns. And that's why connection feels so tangible in shared storytelling. We're neurobiologically resonating with each other. So when we sit around and we say, "Do you remember when?" It's not just reminiscing. We're preserving history through chemistry. We're keeping the people we love alive in the web of our neural connections. As humans, we're wired for this. Our species survives not just by passing down genes, but by passing down stories. We've always used narrative to teach and remember and to find meaning. The hippocampus may store the memory, but it's the meaning that we assign that determines how it shapes us. Meaning transforms memories from simple recollection to part of our identity. And that's why the same event can feel completely different for two people, because what it means to each of them is different. Meaning also gives memory longevity. So when we reflect through journaling and conversation and gratitude, we strengthen something called elaborative encoding. That's the act of writing or talking about an experience, and it helps us to integrate it across multiple brain regions. And this deepens both understanding as well as emotional impact. And that's why gratitude practices improve well-being. They're not just there to make us happier, they literally rewire our brains to notice and retain what is good. That's why I journal, and not just to record events, but more to process them, to make sense of them. It helps me to anchor them, and writing turns fleeting experiences into narrative. It transforms chaos into coherence, and it gives the brain a story to hold on to. And maybe that's what all of this is really about, coherence. Life doesn't unfold neatly. It's messy and it's unpredictable, and sometimes it can be heartbreaking. But when we connect the dots, when we see how the beautiful and the painful and the ordinary, they all just belong to each other and they belong together, our memories form kind of an inner map, a sense of continuity, a sense of self. And neuroscience supports this too. The prefrontal cortex works with the hippocampus to build the narrative identity, a consistent sense of me, over time. And that's how we know who we are, even as everything changes. When we reflect on memory, it isn't just nostalgia, it's integration, and it's how we understand ourselves. So as I sit here with you, the house is quiet, the weather is calm. I feel both full and, I don't know, something else. Grief and gratitude have braided together within me, and I just don't even know how to name that. But I do know this: I am thankful. I'm thankful for every laugh, every shared adventure, every frustrating project, and every moment that became part of our collective story. And I keep thinking about how to live like that on purpose, to create memories that matter, to make the extraordinary extraordinary by paying attention, and to keep saying yes to experiences, to first, to curiosity, and to connection. Because those are the things that make life feel full. And brain science just confirms what the heart already knows. Like, what you pay attention to, you remember. What you love, you keep, And when you let your senses in, the sound of laughter, the feel of sunlight, the taste of salt, in the air, you are giving your brain more threads to weave with. And when you stay curious and you're open to newness, you're keeping dopamine flowing, creating that sense of vitality. And when you share your stories, you are deepening connections. And when you reflect with gratitude, you are turning memories into meaning and into wisdom. And I think that that is the art of living well, not just collecting experiences, but inhabiting them, letting them change you, letting them become part of who you are. Because in the end, what remains of us isn't just what we have done, but it's what we've shared. You know, the laughter, the echoes, that touch that lingers, the stories that get told again and again at family tables long after we're gone. Those are the imprints that last. Those are the moments that matter. And so I keep moving forward, planning, dreaming, building, with a heart that remembers, with gratitude for what has been, and the curiosity for what comes next, because life isn't meant to be perfectly balanced. It's meant to be felt. And the moments that you feel the most, the love, awe, grief, joy, happiness, laughter, all of those things that you feel within your soul, those are the things that shape the story of you. That's what I've learned over the last month. And that's also what science shows. And that's what, I'll keep teaching. I'll keep teaching that a well-lived life is a tapestry of meaningful moments. It's all stitched together through presence, emotion, curiosity, and love. And every time you choose to live fully, you're creating memories that matter, memories that become your legacy, memories that make life truly worth remembering. Right. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I will see you in the next one, hopefully sooner rather than later, like last time. Apologies. Thank you so much for tuning into the Reawaken You podcast. If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to rate or review this podcast in the app that you're listening on. It really does help others to find this show. And if there's someone you know who would love this too, please share this with them. I'm also over on Substack at the House of Reawakening, where I share my latest articles, musings, and whatever else is on my mind. So you'll find the link in the show notes below. I'd love for you to join me over there too. Until next time, stay awake, stay authentic, and stay connected to your truth.